What about the sleepless Elliotte Friedman? This was Elliotte at 2 a.m., in fact, 2:08 to be exact, Eastern time, on Rantanen, hearing Stars and Hurricanes, that framework of a deal we will see on an extension over the next few hours. The sleep-deprived Elliotte Friedman alongside his sidekick, Kyle Bukauskas. It's the 32 Thoughts Insiders. Gentlemen, Elliotte, thank you. And Kyle, thank you, because I know you guys are going to have a very busy day. Take it away. What do you have for us?
Yeah, David, he is the only man this week that has more screen time than a Call of Duty Twitch streamer, Elliotte. So why don't we start with...
for makeup. Let's just say that.
Man, it's been yeoman's work in the back here already this morning. So, Elliotte, Mikko Rantanen, I mean, you had the first one. It was 12:39 Eastern. The talks were intensifying. We've got the framework of a deal of Rantanen going to Dallas, but all of this, of course, hinges on an extension that Dallas would be looking for. So what's the latest? What gets this over the goal line?
What gets it over the goal line, Kyle, would be an extension if it happens. And I believe that they got permission, the Stars, around 12:30, 1 a.m. Earlier this morning, Eastern time, to begin to talk extension with Rantanen. You know, we'll see where it goes. I think at that time of night, I'm not sure anybody was really expecting anything to get done. The two teams are being very quiet about what actually is in this trade. And I understand it for obvious reasons. If it doesn't happen, you don't want anyone's name getting out there. So the two sides are being really quiet about it, but they continue the negotiations with Rantanen, and we'll see. You know, I will say this. There are a lot of teams who believe that Rantanen was interested in signing with Dallas. They think it's a team that legitimately he was interested in playing for as his NHL career continued. And I think that Carolina dealt with Dallas knowing that he was interested in potentially signing with Dallas, but nothing is done until it's done.
Carolina, of course, wanting help in the here and now, too, as they try to make a playoff push there.
No tax state, too, we should mention. So
in Texas.
I assume that's going to be a factor in the negotiations.
So that's a big swing from a Central Division contender. And then you've got Colorado that have almost rebuilt their team in a way on the fly throughout the whole season. The latest one coming last night, Brock Nelson going from Long Island. It's been an emotional week for him, but they get their number 2 center.
Well, it's a great trade for the Avalanche. You look at their top 6, it is spectacular. We'll see what happens in Nelson's future, if it's in Colorado or elsewhere, but that is a huge price for a rental. This has been a seller's market. You take a look at a lot of the deals that have been made, they have been outstanding for the teams that have been trading. Callum Ritchie instantaneously goes right to the top of the Islanders prospect list, but he's a perfect fit for what the Avalanche are trying to do. There was a lot of interest in Nelson, Winnipeg, Toronto, Devils, Washington, I'm sure others too, but that's a big price, and Colorado stepped up for it.
How do you think Winnipeg's feeling right now?
You know, I think when you take a look at teams today that probably have some of the most pressure to do something, I think Winnipeg and Toronto, especially for Canadian viewers, they would feel very high on that list.
Okay, when we talked to the podcast, our trade deadline preview with the Edmonton Oilers, one of the things you said they were looking for is a defenseman that could play on both sides of it. They landed Jake Wallman yesterday. Could that be a guy that fits that mold for the Oilers?
He does. He has played both sides before. It's the conditional first-round pick is interesting. It's top 12 protected in 2026, or if they trade their 2020, if the Oilers trade their 2027 first-rounder before the 2026 trade deadline, it automatically goes to 2026. But it's a nice bit of business for the Sharks, who got a second-round pick for taking Wallman out of Detroit and then get a first-round pick out of it. But they were looking for defense, and they got it. And I think by my count and other people's count, because I was told there was no math, the Oilers have about $300,000 of salary cap room left. So if they want to do anything else, they'll probably have to move dollars out, but they maximized their current cap space to get Wallman done.
Quickly, anything else bubbling early for you?
You know, I think one of the names that's been out there is Scott Laughton, and there's been a lot of interest in Laughton. I think what the trade returns have said, including the one from Tampa to Seattle and now that one last night with Brock Nelson, is the price on Laughton has gone up. I think it's at least a first-rounder or a first-round type player before Philly will consider doing that. And so it is definitely a seller's market.
That is at Friedge, HNIC. Beware the imposters today, David.
All right, Elliotte and Kyle, the perfect filibusters. We only have 6 hours and 53 minutes now left to go here. So,
hey, do you think? Do you remember like what you would take before a game? Sudafed, Sniffers, Red Bull, Toradol. You think Elliott's on that right now?
I don't know.
He looks pretty good for this early and all. He just gave us.
He's
a lot
not even
of
a human being. He's AI, as Army tweeted out last night.
He's only on Ozempic. That's all I was like. So
that's our sponsor, so that works.
Oh no, shots are early.
It's too early for this. All right, let's start with the idea of Rantanen. And it's hard for us to discuss this because we don't know the framework of who would be going back. But let's go with the idea that Dallas is going to get an extension done and is going to get this deal done. Jennifer, we'll start with you. Does it make them the prohibitive favorites to win the Stanley Cup when you add a player of that caliber?
Well, they're in the discussion, absolutely. And I think with Rantanen, it's been so interesting. And for him, certainly it has been a lot for him to adjust to. But for Dallas, you think about how that adds so much to their top six. And Rantanen, he's one of the best players in the league right now. So I'm looking at the Dallas roster, how much that adds to their team. Then absolutely they become a huge contender. I mean, okay, he was a little slow starting in Carolina, but I think for him it was knowing, is this where I want to stay? And I think there's a lot of question marks there. So Dallas, I mean, Kel, I think it looks really good for them.
I'm with you, David. I think that puts them at the top for the Stanley Cup, at least in the final. I look at Rantanen, and for me, I just can't figure out why it didn't work so well in Carolina. You know, he is upset by the trade. He certainly wasn't expecting it, and so he just couldn't get his footing in Carolina. But he is a terrific player that's going to help so much. And what's the smirk for?
Oh, no, I think it's 2v. I think it's 2v2. I think this is a huge chance and gamble by Dallas. I think Rantanen has showed you top winger in the league with Colorado, top winger in the league playing with McKinnon, wasn't a top winger in the league at Four Nations, hasn't been a top winger in the league with Carolina. I just think it's crazy that we're at this situation that Carolina gives up Natchez, gives up what they have, not sure that he's going to sign an extension. He kind of acted like he was blindsided a bit when he got traded.
Sure.
So now, like, there's a huge risk. Now we're at trade deadline soon. Hours away.
Hang on. How'd you play when you went from Vancouver to Anaheim? Were you at your best when you're...
But I did in the summer. So I didn't have to do it mid-season.
Right, which that's what I'm
just saying, Kel, it's a huge... Yeah, he's got a reason to be. It's a hard adjustment to move, especially, but it's a huge gamble for Dallas.
Not only was he shocked, Carolina does play a different style of game. They play the man-on-man, so not only the shock getting adjusted to that style, I think he's going to do great if he moves over to Dallas. And even going back to like the powerhouse that they are, they moved that for Granlund earlier on in the year. I thought he's fitting well on that second line.
He's a really good player,
If they get they're going to get Heiskanen back. If they get Seguin back, maybe first round timeline. That's the wagon in the West, in my opinion. Let's see what Vegas does the rest of the day.
Yeah, and again, it's all contingent on what they give up, but they have the young pieces. Bichelle, of course, Maverick Bork, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they have some. We talk Stankoven, possibility. Yeah. I'm throwing names out there. I don't know if any of these people.
I would not move Stankoven.
No,
he's a puck hound. He's cheap. I like.
But they have the pieces, is what we're saying. They have great young pieces that could go over to Carolina.
For me, I think the conversationals for a guy like Rantanen, for the way how established he is and what he's done in Colorado, why wouldn't he just have gone in and talked to management himself at some point? How can you be that shocked if you're looking for a contract extension of that magnitude? I know they tend to rely on the agents so heavily, but for me, if you got to go in there, maybe what would you have done if you're him? You win a Stanley Cup there. You're playing with the best player on the planet over the last 2 years, in Nathan McKinnon. You basically get to hang out in the corner in the offensive zone, and you get the puck distributed to you every night, and you put up 100 points.
I would have gone to my agent and said, "Hey, listen, can I have a conversation with the general manager myself? Can I figure this out? Like, why are we at this point where we can't get a deal? Let's make something happen that works for you, works for me, and then all of a sudden, then you don't get traded." And
I only listen to 2 podcasts, Spitting Chicklets and 32 Thoughts. And 32 Thoughts, Elliotte said that I think they thought that it was a negotiation tactic. I don't think Rantanen felt like it was that close to the end. Next thing you know, boom, gone.
Right.
So I felt like from his end, he felt like he had time before he felt like he could go.
That should have been a conversation that happened in the summertime.
For sure.
That's a summertime
You should be in control of your own destiny.
No doubt.
You're a player of this caliber. The thing I do like about him, so I'm not the only one just ragging on him, I like size in the playoffs. He's size. So he's a big guy. Regardless of how he fits in the regular season, you like big wingers in the playoffs. Those
but
guys
also, you got to think about Dallas now then. If they're thinking, okay, well, if it wasn't the right fit there, if he wasn't playing as well as he could, they must believe they've got the players then to complement him nicely, and he can help them elevate too in terms of their performance.
Yeah, and he was theoretically, we see he was a bit blindsided. Chris McFarland sort of said, okay, enough of this negotiation. I'm going to move on. They did go out and land Brock Nelson. We'll get to that in a matter of moments. But we do want to get out to our strategy room. Sam Cosentino with some thoughts on what might happen today. Trade deadline again, 4 hours plus in counting. Sam.
All right, thanks, DA. And looking around, clearly I've won the lottery here. Jason Bukala, the former head scout of the Florida Panthers. His brilliance helped build the team that won the Cup last year. We're so lucky to have him. Check out sportsnet.ca. If you're wondering what your team acquired, Jason has it all there. Then we have Rick Bowness, 2,726 games coached as a head or an assistant.
Yeah.
My goodness. We are honored to have you. Thanks so much for coming in and taking some time away from the beach in Florida. Derek Newsy-Lalonde, formerly the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings for 2.5 years. We saw him at his very best in Hockey Night in Canada a couple of years ago in the playoffs. Great to have you here as well. Want to get started on what has actually happened so far. We'll talk about the Brock Nelson trade. He moves from the New York Islanders to the Colorado Avalanche, and some people a little bit surprised by how that played out. Elliotte saying there were a number of suitors for him. Newsy, you had some experience with Brock. Tell us a little bit about what's going the way of the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, I did. You never really know the player until you spend time with the player, you coach the player. World Championships last year, the Islanders get knocked out in the first round. Brett Peterson, our general manager, calls him up, makes the pitch to come over, and it was complete chaos. He had kids going. You could hear kids in the background. He had this going on. He's got daddy duties. Like, I got to call you back. Let me talk to the family. He calls back. He's like, I'm coming. Not only does he come over, he comes over, whatever you need from me. His IQ's better than I had anticipated. His stick skills were better than I anticipated. He skated better than I anticipated. Unbelievable teammate. Whatever you need of him, he did it. It was that performance over at World Championship, getting in front of Mike Sullivan, getting in front of Johnny Van Beesbrook, is probably why he made Four Nations. I think it's a home run pickup for Colorado.
Rick, you were in a similar situation last year with Winnipeg. You talk about Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli being acquired at the trade deadline. When you get a player who is of that kind of ilk, what is it like and what does it do for your room?
Well, let me just jump in on that Rantanen deal. Like, if he ends up in Dallas, let's not forget that strong Finnish connection there.
Yeah.
Rupe Hintz, Esa Lindell, Miro Heiskanen, and they're all great players, so they're going to open their arms to him. They're going to be thrilled to have him. But when you get a player like Brock Nelson, okay, so where is he going to fit? And is he going to have a presence when he walks into that locker room? Because he's taken ice time away from somebody that's been there all year. Now, unfortunately for the Avs, that middle stat so far, it just hasn't worked. So now the players see that, management see that, coaches see that. So now we've got to go get the right fit. Brock Nelson is a perfect fit to walk in there and play behind Nathan McKinnon. He is. He's big, strong, and Kevin just said you need size in the playoffs. He brings that, and he's got the skills. He's got the character. And now he's got a great chance to win a Stanley Cup. So I think when you're trying to make those trades and you're looking at the pieces have to fit. And that's a perfect fit, as has been mentioned, for Colorado. He is the perfect guy.
So, Rick, we'll flip-flop and move it down to you, Jason. You look at the other side of the coin for the New York Islanders, clearly a seller here, but they pick up a guy in Cal Ritchie who's playing in Oshawa right now. They get another pick in William Dufour, who's been known to be a bit of a goal scorer, but some challenges with him getting to play the right way all the time. And then some picks. Like, if you're the New York Islanders, you have to be pretty happy with an expiring piece, sorry, Gaz, moving the way of Colorado and the return you get from it.
Yeah, so let's just concentrate on Ritchie right now out of the box. And here's the thing with the guy like Cal Ritchie, at 6'2", almost 200 pounds, a player who can play the middle, who when he first came to the Ontario Hockey League, he lurked, if you know what I mean. He kind of waited for plays to evolve, and then when the puck ended up on his stick, good things happened. He leaned goal scorer early in his development curve. Now he's equal parts distributor and goal scorer. He uses his size as more of an advantage to extend plays. He reads and reacts, slows things down. He makes people around him better. And the Islanders are going to benefit from this type of a player for a long, long time. I'm curious now in the offseason, let's just punt it down to the offseason. Nelson, this is a great fit, would all agree with that. But he's an Islander for life. If he ends up back on the island and they end up having a guy like Ritchie in the fold, it's going to be an even bigger win for them. Nice bit of business here by Lou Lamoriello and the New York Islanders. They get some real good players, some real good assets in return for a rental, potentially, and Nelson going out the door.
Yeah, and Colorado getting some more depth scoring. That's going to be a huge move. DA, back to you.